In this video, I am going to show you what to do with your 35mm film after you have shot it. So we need to develop it so that then we actually have negatives that we can make prints from, or we can scan into the computer and be able to do digital manipulation with them. So after you've shot a roll of 35mm film, here is what you're going to do. There are some stores that still develop 35mm film. A couple local shops we have here in the Salt Lake area are Nichols and what's the other one? I just blanked on it. Replicolor. So Nichols Photo Lab and Replicolor are two good ones that you could get your film developed locally. There's also a bunch of online stores that you can send the film to them, they develop it for you and then send it back. For this video I'm going to show how we can do it ourselves. Having somebody else do it is always more expensive, and then you're also on their timeline, whereas if you develop it yourself, it's ready as soon as you get through the process. So that's what we're going to do. This is black and white film. It's a completely different process, different set of chemicals for color film. So this is only going to apply to black and white film. The other reason that I like to develop my own film rather than taking it somewhere and having somebody else do it is that you have more control over it. So this process I'm going to show you, we're just going to develop it straight, regular, normal, but there is a couple twists and tweaks you could do during the developing process called pushing or pulling your film, and that's kind of a more advanced step, but that is an option if you are developing your own film. So to develop this, we either need a completely pitch black room, which I don't have here, so what I'm going to use is something called a daylight bag. And it's these bags right here that kind of look like a t-shirt. So it gives us a completely pitch black area because our film is super sensitive to light. If you think about the shots you took, your aperture was probably super tiny and your shutter speed was 1/1000th of a second. So if I expose this to any bit of light unintentionally, it will ruin the film. Even the darkroom safe lights is too much light for this, so we need completely pitch black for this. So that is why I'm going to use one of these daylight bags. I will also need a tank. This is where I'm going to put the film in, and a tank lid, as well as a column. Film reel. This is what we're going to load the film on, and I need two sides of this reel to go together. So if you notice in the center, that centerpiece, how this one is smooth on the outside, and then this one has all those like grooves and channels in it. So we need those two opposite ends because they click together like so, and then these tabs line up, and I just twist those together. You can potentially lock it together where the tabs don't line up, and that will not work. So you have to make sure to get it where those tabs are lining up. We also want to make sure that there are these little ball bearings in there. There's one on each side, and we want to make sure that those are actually in there and they haven't fallen out, because if they have, your film won't load and you'll be super frustrated when you're trying to load it. So need a reel, and then I need a pair of scissors, a can opener, and my roll of film. So now that I have all of those objects, I'm going to put them all into my safe light bag. Again, if you had a completely pitch black room that had zero light in it whatsoever, you could use that instead of this bag. So I'll throw it all in there. You'll notice there's this interior zipper, and then I can seal that up. Then what I'm going to do is put my arms in here to be able to do everything. If you have something like an Apple Watch on, take it off, because if it kicks on with the light, then that will ruin your film as well. So then these next steps from here on out will be done in this bag. I'm gonna pull everything back out of the bag right now to show that process, because me just sticking my hands in this bag won't be very helpful for you. But just keep in mind that everything I'm doing from here on will be actually done in that bag. So you're doing this all blind again. Your film has this end that kind of has this, let's see if we can get this to focus. So you can see this end that kind of pokes out on your film compared to this side is flat. I like to try to pry off this flat side. I find it easier than trying to pry off this side. So in my bag, I'd feel around, feel for that edge, and then find the flat edge, and that is gonna be the side that I'm gonna pull off. With the can opener, I like to use the side that is more squared off rather than this super pointy edge. But what I need to do is pull this cap off. So there's just this tiny little metal ledge that I'm trying to catch to be able to pull off, which it is kind of a pain to get, so you might have to mess with this for a while and use some elbow grease until you start getting it off, and then you can just pull the whole thing off. Now I'm going to push that tab in, and there is my roll of film. So I have that L edge, and then it is on a spool. So to be able to load it into this reel, I need to cut off this L edge. So again, I'm going to be doing this in complete darkness, so I kind of have to just feel around, be careful, don't chop your fingers off. And I want to try to cut that edge as straight as possible, so that now I don't have that L anymore. I just have a nice straight edge. And then I'm gonna find my reel in my bag, and you'll notice that it has these bigger sections right here than over here. There's just like a small part. So I want to load the film in going this direction from this bigger end going towards those ball bearing side. So what I do is I start feeding that through until those ball bearings catch it. Then I can just rotate each hand opposite directions back and forth, and it is going to load my entire roll up. And what it's actually doing is it's spiraling the film in there so that none of it is touching. There's these little gaps in between it as it spirals in. If for any reason the film all of a sudden gets really hard to twist on, like this is, I'm barely doing anything and it's twisting on. If it gets really difficult, what happened is the film jumped off of the level it was supposed to be on, and it's touching another piece of film. If you don't correct that, your film will be ruined. It will look like this. So all those like splotchy areas, that was from the film touching while we did this chemical process. So super important that you get the film in correctly, otherwise the chemicals won't be able to hit all the parts of the film that it needs to, and it will ruin your film. So if it gets difficult in your bag, what you would have to do is twist this reel apart, pull it apart, put it back together, and start reeling it over again. So now I just need to get rid of this little piece. You can just pull it straight off, or you could cut it off. I normally just cut it off, that way I don't have to worry about pulling too hard on the film. And then I'll just do a couple more twists to make sure that the film is all the way on my reel. Next thing I need is that column. You'll notice the column has kind of this bigger donut on one side, and it doesn't on the other side. I am going to put that column in the reel. It doesn't matter which side I put it in, it just matters once I put it in the tank that I know where that donut is. So I want that bigger donut going down in the tank, like so. And then I want my column, I might have lost it. Go grab it. Oh, just kidding, I just put it in there. What am I thinking? Take the lid, put the lid on, make sure it's nice and tight. And because I have that column in there, have the lid on, this canister is now light tight. So at this point, I would go ahead and pull it out of my bag, and this can be out in the light now. and it could be ready to go. So now I am going to do the chemical process of how to develop it. That's what this canister is for. This tank is to be able to put the chemicals in it. So the first chemical I'm going to use is Developer. There's 3 chemicals we use here: Developer, Stop, Fix, in that order. So Developer is the first one. This has a label, it says Film Developer, so I know that is what I am using. This is just straight mixed developer. It is not diluted at all, so you have to dilute it as you are doing it. So on these measuring cups that say developer, it says up to here, which is the 150 milliliter mark. I'm going to put developer, and then I'm going to put another 150 milliliters of water, so that I have total 300 milliliters of water and developer mix. Super important is the temperature of the water I add to this. It has to be 68 degrees exactly. So I have thermometers. Make sure the water is exactly 68 before you add it to this measuring cup. So once I get the water to 68, I'm gonna open this, pour developer into that first line that says developer, and then I am going to add the 68 degree water to that line. Then I am going to pour it in to this center hole. As soon as I get it poured into that center hole, I am going to start a timer for exactly 9.5 minutes. Once that timer's going, I'm going to agitate this like so. I don't need to be shaking it like crazy, just gentle agitation. What that does is make sure the chemicals get onto all parts of the film. So I'll agitate it, and I'm going to agitate it for the first 30 seconds. And then I'm just gonna gently tap it and set it down. And then every 30 seconds, I'm gonna pick it up and agitate it for another 10 seconds. So every 30 seconds, I'll grab it, agitate it for 10 seconds, tap it a couple times and set it down. And again, that is just making sure that the chemical gets all over the film. You can agitate too much and it will make your film super streaky. So make sure you stay with that. Every 30 seconds, just agitate it for 10 seconds. And don't agitate it the entire time, because you could potentially ruin your film. So once it gets to the 9.5 minutes, then what I do is I just dump it out into the sink, and all of these holes up here will allow the chemical to just pour straight out. So keep that in mind when you're agitating. Don't tip this too far, because the chemical will come straight out of those holes. So once I have the developer out of the way, then I need to use the stopper. So that's going to stop the development. For this, our stopper is just 68 degree water. So once you get the water to 68 degrees, just leave this faucet running, because you're going to need it for that developer, and then you'll need it for this stop, and then you're going to need it at the end for the wash as well. So once I have this at 68 degrees, I'm just going to hold this underneath the water and let it fill up until the water is bubbling out. And then I'm going to agitate it for 30 seconds, and then I'll just dump it out again. And then I'm going to fill it once more. So the stop is filling it with water twice. So I filled it with water, agitated for 30 seconds, dumped it out. I will fill it again with water, and again you'll see it start bubbling out of the top. That's how you know it's full. Agitate it for 30 seconds, and then dump it out. And all that's doing is just getting all that developer off of the film so that it stops that process. That's why it's called the stop. Then I need fixer. Make sure you read the labels, because you'll notice the bottles are the exact same bottle. So make sure you're reading the labels and that you have the film fixer. This one is slightly different than the developer. This one is already diluted, so all you have to do is just fill this to the 300 milliliter line with fixer. And then, once you have that, same thing, we are gonna pour this into this tank in that center hole. And then for fixer, my time is 5 minutes. So I'm gonna start a timer for 5 minutes, and then I'm gonna agitate it just like I did for the developer. So every 30 seconds, I'll pick it up and agitate it for 10 seconds, tap it a couple times and let it sit there for 30 seconds, pick it back up, agitate it for 10 seconds, tap it a couple times. Once the 5 minutes is up, I'm gonna pour this in a different location than everything else I've been pouring. Everything else has just been going down the drain. For the fixer, it needs to go into this bucket that says fixer only. So I'm gonna pour it in there. We actually reuse it, and then we have to dispose of the fixer because it can't go down the drain. Once the fixer is done, so I've done the developer, the stop, the fixer, now I need to wash all of that chemical off. So with the faucet running, I am going to fill the tank again. I'm going to agitate it for 10 seconds, and then I am going to dump that water out. And then I'm going to fill it again, agitate it, dump it out. So it's very similar to the stop step, and we're just getting all that chemical off. So after I've done that a couple times, I am safe to open up this tank. At this point, we've gone through the chemical process to make this film no longer light sensitive. So now this could be exposed to light. So I'm gonna pull it out, pull the column out. We've washed it a couple times, but now we're gonna do a deeper wash, and that is what this tank is for. So this tank can hold like 4 or 5 reels, but if you have your reels in there and they've been in there for a couple minutes and then somebody else adds their reel, your time for this needs to start over. So if there's a couple people that are developing at the same time as you, wait till everyone's ready to actually start your wash time. And then when you put these in there, just remember what order you put them in, so that when you take them out, you know whose reel is whose. But so you drop them in there, you turn the water on ever so slightly, don't turn it on too high or the hose will pop off of that. And what this does is it just fills with water and then dumps it out. Fills with water, dumps it out, so that it's just really washing all the chemical off of your film. And you will leave it in there for 4 minutes. So again, if your film has already been in there for 2 minutes and somebody drops their reel in, now they've brought in new chemical, so you have to start that 4 minutes over. Once it's done, you can either reach your hand down in there to get it, or I like to just kind of tip this to have the reels fall out. Now my film is washed, so the last thing I'm going to do before I dry it is drop it in this bucket right here of PhotoFlow. This is basically just dish soap essentially, and what it does is it helps so that as the water dries on our film, it doesn't leave streaks. Sometimes we still get some streaks, but it kind of helps. So I'm just going to drop it in there for 30 seconds, and then I can go ahead and reach my hand in there and pull it out. You can touch this because, like I said, it's basically just dish soap. So now all of the chemical process, washing, all that is done with this film. Now all I need to do is dry it. So I'm going to go ahead and twist these 2 reels apart. What I want to do is over the sink, just grab my fingers and pinch the film and just very gently squeegee it. Just once, just so it gets majority of the water off, so it's not just super gripping wet. Don't do it a whole bunch and don't do it super hard because you will scratch the emulsion. This dull side is the emulsion side, and it is super fragile, and once you scratch it, it's kind of ruined. And also, while your film is wet, this emulsion is very sticky, and it likes to collect dust, and dust is our worst enemy in film photography. So just do this once. Now is not the time to look at your negatives, because again, the longer they're just hanging out outside in the open air, the more dust you're going to get, and it'll be super hard to get rid of that dust. So squeegee it once, and then bring it over here to this drying rack. What you do is you just open up this drying rack, and then you hang it like all these are hanging. So you grab one of these hooks, and you just clip it to the top of your film, and then you hang it in there. And then you may need another one to clip onto the bottom of your film just so it will hang straight. Oops. Make sure that your film isn't touching anybody else's film, because if they're both wet, it'll glue them together. And then close this as soon as possible. We want this door to be closed as much as possible so that dust isn't getting in there. If you hear the fan running in this, it's drying it super quick. Do not open that door when the fan is running.